Hi, everyone. Welcome to the National Citizens Alliance live Q&A on GMO climate engineering. We're going to get into the subject tonight and look at the bigger picture. We're going to connect the dots tonight. And I'm really pleased to welcome Suzanne Maher here tonight. She's a Canadian environmental researcher. I'm very impressed with her, and she can just see things for how they are and what's going on. And please share this with your friends so more people can listen in tonight. And welcome, Suzanne, tonight to this live Q&A.
Thank you so much for asking me, Stephen. Pleasure to be on.
Yeah, I'd like to just say Matthew was going to be with us, Matthew Cameron, but he's dealing with a personal issue. So we will have him on probably, again with Suzanne and in a month or two. So we can have him on as well. But we're going to go ahead tonight with this. And just have an open mind, everyone. Our purpose tonight is to provide facts to help inform the Canadian people and, in some senses, deprogram the Canadian people, because you're given a lot of misinformation. And for us, the National Citizens Alliance, we look at every issue that's potentially having a serious impact on the Canadian people. We are not going to keep our heads in the sand and pretend stuff is not going on. Our duty, our obligation is service to the Canadian people, their prosperity, their welfare. So we have an obligation to look at all issues that are impacting the Canadian people. And this is one of them tonight, and we're going to shed light on it. So we're going to start. Suzanne, could you just tell us a bit about your organization you run, Bye Blue Sky?
Sure. So I I founded Bye Blue Sky about 4 years ago. So it's been, for me, a real creative engine of awareness, Stephen. It's a global organization. And what I've done is I've used creative communication, education, and peaceful protest to speak to people about this issue. So what I've done is I've gotten up billboards all over North America. My education is my Facebook and website, and I've done well over 20 events all over Ontario talking to people about this issue, as well as peaceful protests. So we've done marches, we've done rallies. So we just kind of throw it against the wall. We see how people respond to this issue. It's such a critically important issue that a lot of people still aren't aware of. So and I've noticed a real groundswell, I would say, in the few years that I have been doing this work. People are waking up to this spring. So it's a wonderful thing.
Excellent stuff, Suzanne. Yeah, and I personally talked to Suzanne. I find her inspirational as a Canadian. She's so bold, and she's willing to look at the tough issues out there in our society, eh? And what a beautiful society we would have if more Canadians were like that, who could speak with the truth and not be afraid to speak it. Because listen, we're going to be stronger as a country, as a people, as families, by knowing the truth and then responding to it. Right, Suzanne?
Absolutely. And we really have to look at everything we've learned throughout our lives and kind of sadly unlearn it, because we're not being told the truth by the establishment in any way, shape, or form, Stephen. So for me, finding out about geoengineering, it's been an interesting journey, because I was already aware of the GMOs, in our food, the fluoride in our water, our banking system. I knew about the corruption, but the geoengineering takes it to another level of understanding. And that's where, as we get into the conversation, we really can connect the dots to what's going on here.
Excellent stuff. And everyone, tonight we're gonna connect the dots, even though it's focused on climate engineering. GMO, which is basically chemical farming, and this is the prominent farming in Canada now, and it's connected to corporate globalist corporations. We're going to look at the big picture. Last week, we did something on mass immigration, which is connected to this globalism agenda And we had an expert on, and we revealed that. You could see all the corruption with mass immigration, how commercial interests are benefiting and the Canadian people are not. So we're going to jump right into this tonight. And could you basically just give a basic definition of geoengineering, Suzanne, just to make sure everyone's on the same page?
Sure. So geoengineering really is the alteration of Earth's climatic systems, and this is vis-a-vis nanoparticle injection. This is perhaps aluminum, calcium carbonate, some sulfates. So what these nanoparticles do, Stephen, is they act as cloud condensation nuclei or seeds. So these seeds, in fact, create something called cirrus clouds. Cirrus clouds will then block the sun and reflect it back into space. And the theory is this will mitigate global warming. This is what the scientists are talking about. So basically the theory is you spray pollution, reflect sunlight back into space, and that will create, the cooling effect. So I want to say there's a lot of fear being created around this issue that, there's a lot of climate chaos. The earth is burning up. Man is the enemy and CO2 is the demon. So again, these are falsities, pushed through a misapplied science objective. There's a definite political and scientific objective here.
Yeah, that's really interesting, everyone. And I think a lot of people didn't know that about climate engineering, geoengineering, that it's just an extension of the climate change agenda.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually trying to, as Susan said, okay, that they're trying to manipulate the global warming phenomena.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this actually, it's interesting to note too, this has been going on a long time. The military was spraying in the 40s and 50s, Stephen. It was called chaff. And so this is this was an older term, but this was called chaff, and it was polymeric aluminum fibers they were spraying for, it was in terms of radar for the military objectives. So this was going on, way before they ramped these programs up in the late 1990s, and they're using very didactic terms to confuse people. So such as solar radiation management, albedo modification, things of that nature. So people, the average person looking at these terms is not going to understand the issue, and that's all part of the agenda there, that they'll be confused because this is such a, making it, a lot more difficult than it needs to be.
Suzanne, before we dig deeper, and that's what we're going to do tonight, everyone, is just dig deeper and then connect the dots. This will be eye-opening, trust me here. And Suzanne, why is this important to the Canadian people, this issue? I know it's on so many levels, right? And I could add one right now. It's harming us with all the contaminants in our food, the water,
yes,
the ecosystems.
That's absolutely it. And that's the main issue, Stephen. It's toxifying our soils, our water, our air. It's mutating us with the epigenetics, transgenics in our food. So this is what I look at this as it's an anti-human agenda. It's an anti-human agenda placed upon humanity. And so this is why we need to wake up. I mean, if we can't go outside without breathing in a lung full of metals or eating mutated food and toxic water, we really don't have much of a future. And so rather than, they need to leave the Earth's, systems, checks and balances alone, because we know the Earth is in perfect harmony. And so to manage it, to manipulate it, to, modify it, this isn't what it's about. God created perfection when he created our earth, and we do not need people with the hubris to think that they can change our weather for corporate and monetary interests. I mean, now our weather is being commoditized and monetized. So this is weather warfare.
Wow. Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah, I posted some videos on that as well.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to understand that they are spraying. Well, first off, I'm going to tell people what they're spraying. They are spraying chemicals, which can be aluminum, barium, strontium, lithium, mercury, ethylene dibromide, and then there's the biologicals. And that could be weaponized molds, fungal spores, desiccated blood cells. And then we've got the nanotechnology component, which is smart dust, little microcomputers, microprocessors. This is quite a toxic witch's brew. There are over 43 different elements being sprayed on us, as per Dr. Sandra Perlingari. She has a great video talking about this. So what we're looking at is a lot of different things now in our ionosphere, Stephen, and there's things now not even up there on the periodic table. And our ionosphere is saturated in this stuff because they've been doing it for so long. So then when you look at that, so we've got the toxic chemicals, and then you've got the ionospheric heaters. So this is HARP. The initial HARP was founded in Gakona, Alaska in the 90s. It was based on a patent by Bernard Eastland, based on Tesla technology. So this base was founded, it was run by the US Navy, the University of Alaska, and basically they were telling us it was a research project. Now these ionospheric heaters are extremely powerful, and now they actually have well over 20 in the world. They're in Puerto Rico, Brazil, Russia, Japan, they're all over. But the main one actually was in Gakona. So they got this going. The prototype started running at about 2001. And so what these do is they particle beam high amounts of RF energy into the atmosphere. These conduct and excite the metals, and then that's how they manipulate the jet stream. They move the jet stream around through this particle beaming and through the chemicals. So for instance, you know, if you're in the US and you've got a storm coming in, you can fishtail that jet stream right out into the East Coast and basically divert it or do anything you want. The weather is basically at their whim. They can do whatever they want with it. Now, in terms, I was actually looking at, there's a fellow in the US, and he's got a great global map. It's called Climate Viewer 3D. And I looked at Calgary to see, or Alberta, to see what was going on there in terms of ionospheric heaters. I thought that would be interesting for you guys to know. And so you guys have one in Edmonton, one in Calgary, and one in Grand Prairie. So all these heaters are very powerful. They emit over 750,000 watts of power. This is, you can equate this to a nuclear bomb. These are very dangerous. So all this energy is going up into the ionosphere, beaming right back down onto the planet, and then radiating us. So HARP can also be used for tomography. So they're doing that. That can also cause earthquakes. And so what you're looking at in terms of this is a spray zap effect, and they can disrupt weather systems, they can hurt or destroy ecosystems, they can alter moods, and they can sicken people. So this is really a full spectrum dominance agenda. That is the military doctrine. It's a full spectrum dominance under the military. And Ilana Freeland really has a great book, Stephen, called Chemtrails, HARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. And she gets into the agendas of the chemtrails, HARP equation very deeply, because this goes way beyond weather modification. This really is huge military project, and covert, but some of it is rather overt. There's a company called Weather Modification Inc. They've been in operation since 1961, and they have 4 clients here in Canada. They have I don't know if it's 1 in BC or 2 in BC, a couple in Saskatchewan, and Alberta as well. So those are smaller projects, and it's to mitigate rain or increase rainfall, deal with fog, deal with hail. But the question is, this company, they've been in existence, they've been doing this work for a long time. Why didn't they put out the fires in BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan that we've had? Because they can. They have the technology. They have it, but they don't, because this is a different agenda. This is disaster capitalism. They want to create these fires. They want to create these floods because there's a lot of money to be made. All these corporations feed at the same trough. So you say, for example, you have your reinsurance companies, you have your pharmaceutical companies, you have all kinds of companies just kind of at the trough here feeding on these disasters. And that's what's happening. So it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, excellent stuff. And it's probably, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'll talk about an example of weather warfare in Houston. Last summer that we had that terrible storm, that terrible flooding in Houston. Now there was a video that was released on YouTube, and they actually have these committees, Stephen, openly, that they talk about modifying the weather. They were modifying the weather 550 miles away about 3 days prior to that hurricane landing. So this was in Pecos, Texas. And so why were they, and people that know about this subject know that geoengineering affects microclimates. So they were geoengineering 550 miles away from an oncoming hurricane in the wake. So this is the recklessness and the danger of what is going on here. And there's nobody really has their finger on the thermostat here. So.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And it's all behind the scenes, isn't it?
Very much so. I also want to mention in terms of HARP as well, that, you know, Russia actually had the first one. It was called the Russian woodpecker. And so basically the US had to keep up. So that's when they got their technology going. And in the 1980s, they had something called the Strategic Defense Initiative. That was called Star Wars. That was a Bush-Reagan objective. And what they told us, and everything is always, it's always for the good of the planet, right? It's always for defense purposes. They said the pretext was to zap missiles from space and, you know, create some kind of space shield. So it was called Star Wars. So at that time, Stephen, they didn't have enough power on the ground. They didn't have enough ionospheric heaters to get this quote space fence in line, you know, at that point. So once Bernard Eastland's patent came along, and then they started the HARP stations up and running around 2000. That's when they started being able to get the power, because they had the power plants, the radar installations, the Doppler, the XBXs, and these all work in conjunction one another. And you can actually triangulate them to hit them at the same spot. And that's why it's coined, Atlanta Freeland coined it the space fence, because this actually is creating a space fence around the planet, this electromagnetic grid.
Wow, amazing. And so the biggest issue that you're seeing is the contaminants from this?
Everything is a contaminant at this stage. And I think what people really need to understand is our world has been weaponized, and that's the bottom line. It's been weaponized. So our water isn't safe. It's fluoridated. We're eating GMO foods, which is, you know, made in a lab, and then they're being sprayed with glyphosates, which is a known carcinogen, right? So we've got that. Then we've got the vaccines, we've got the chemical trails, and then we've got the radar frequencies and the smog pollution. So this is what we're dealing with. So once we can look at that world has been weaponized, we can then look at ways to mitigate and improve our health, because this is a full-on assault. And as I say, this is an anti-human agenda, and we're living in a hostile environment. And, you know, we're told black is white and white is black. So we really have to do our own research on these subjects, because this is all available to us. Once we start researching, it only took me, Stephen, probably 3 or 4 hours looking at this.
Sure.
No, this is true. And much less looking up at the sky. All we need to do is look up to see there's something very strange going on. I mean, sadly, people under 30 aren't going to know much of a blue sky because, you know, they've been doing this for so long. But this is not normal. These cross hatches, you know, colors of all crazy sorts. You know, trails and atmospheric conditions that shouldn't be occurring, because there is a definite chemical and thermodynamic reaction to spraying persistent contrails for them to linger. You can't just spray, you know, a contrail and have it linger. This is water vapor. Water vapor evaporates in 60 seconds. What this is doing is these are spraying chemicals, spreading out, creating this pollutants, and blocking our sun. Our sun, actually, we're looking at about 22% less sunlight at this stage, which is wreaking havoc with our ecosystem. I mean, so we're looking at molds, fungi, our trees. I'm sure people have noticed our trees. They're getting something called chlorosis, because there's not enough photosynthesis for the trees, to take the sun in. So this is devastating on all fronts. And particularly, Stephen, we're not going to be leaving much to our children. So this is why I encourage everybody to research, step up, and get active, because there won't be anything left.
Fair enough. And I just want to put this in Canadian context, because we're a very large size, one of the largest countries in the world. So what percentage of the area do you think is this geoengineering is being applied? Certainly not all of it, right?
Well, every NATO nation is sprayed. And certainly Russia as well, and China, even the communist countries are sprayed as well. Every NATO nation, and every province, as far as I know, is being sprayed. No one's inured to this poisoning, because there is a definite agenda here. I mean, they're not leaving anybody alone. This is a full-on dystopian 1984. So no one is inured to this.
So you think it's covering the entire sky in Canada, or is it just pockets here and there?
I would say every province.
No, but pockets within the province?
That is hard to say. I would need,
because, to cover the sky, there would have to be, thousands of planes just spraying the stuff, right?
Well, and it spreads out very quickly.
It does, eh? I see. Right.
Will take.
Okay.
And that's another thing too. Even if your province isn't sprayed, the one next to you is. So you're going to be getting their fallout as well. And I don't know. They're all sprayed as far as I know. No one's ever told me any different.
Okay. Because it seems like a lot to cover, right? And but then they're falling to the ground, so they have to keep spraying, right?
Well, they do, and that's the whole thing too. What goes up must come down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to link this now, everyone, so we can put this in context, because this is all connected to climate change and the climate change agenda. And, the current government is spending, 2.5 billion plus on climate change in other countries, and they're funding all sorts here. Suzanne, could you connect that dot to that agenda?
Well, I think this is nothing more than high treason, because they're basing giving away our money on climate change based on a lie. This is the IPCC. And you have to look at the founder who founded the Green Movement, which was an oil magnate millionaire named Maurice Strong in the 1970s. And this is where the Green Movement started. And he created this global warming theory because they knew it would play to a lot of agendas, and that is clearly their dystopian one world order. So basically, they told us that man is the enemy. Things were not sustainable. Meat eating was not sustainable. Cars, single dwelling homes, and this kind of thing. So we had to reduce our carbon footprint. So when we look at this, looking at carbon is definitely not the tail that wags the dog, because water vapor is 95% of the equation of greenhouse gases. CO2 is an infinitesimal 0.04%. So that's a red flag, and only 3% of the greenhouse gases in terms of human activity, mining, transportation, and industry. It's 3% of CO2 activity annually. So people aren't looking at the facts. And another thing too is CO2, Stephen, is a trace life-giving greenhouse gas. I mean, and that's the thing. And plants thrive on it. It's plant food. So they've demonized a greenhouse gas. So it's misapplied science to pursue a political objective. And also the IPCC, who is the political advocacy group of the United Nations, they've indicated we haven't had warming since 1998. So, and their models have also been shown to be flawed. And another really interesting thing was in 2009, something came out called ClimateGate. And that was in the UK. It was a big scandal. And it was from the University of East Anglia. And it showed that the scientists were cooking the books to support the theory that CO2 concentrations created this global warming. So CO2 actually follows temperature. It doesn't create temperature. Nature creates temperature. So that, again, looking at history, we're looking at the medieval warming period. We can look at the Bronze Age, pre-industrial revolution, and even the post-war economic boom. Those were all warmer periods. So this is misapplied science to pursue. And this is the whole thing, Stephen. This is $1 trillion industry, climate change and carbon capture. So, this isn't about scientific objectives, practical scientific objectives. There's an agenda, a big agenda at play here.
Yeah. And so the Canadian people can understand through this climate change narrative, allows them to implement all sorts of controlling policies on the people. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that's what
Yeah.
we're looking at. Yeah, we're looking at something called Agenda 21. We're looking at carbon taxation. So carbon taxing us on our footprint. And this is another good point. When you mentioned Canada is the second largest country in the world. We've got huge, vast amounts of wilderness. And a smallest population, 35 million, very, very small. So why are we being carbon taxed? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
when
it doesn't at all.
Small population and massive amounts of forest.
Yes.
So, yeah.
It doesn't make sense, yeah, because then that's something we talk about, the massive carbon sinks, which is the forest you're talking about. Also, the land mass is a carbon sink.
Yes.
So if you really look at the evidence, everyone, we're actually emitting probably negative carbon emissions because of all the sinks.
Yeah.
And so this ties into some kind of UN Agenda 21, and we're the losers, the Canadian people. We're getting taxed to death. This geoengineering is going on. We encourage everyone to go look. There's been presentations at the University of Calgary by professors, other universities. There's documents that prove it, and it's all about this climate change agenda. And it's $1 trillion industry, as Susan said, and the climate change is actually being used now in warfare, as you said.
Absolutely.
To take out enemies.
Weather warfare, and we can even look at the history going back, to weather modification. I mean, in the beginning of the 1900s, there was a fellow named Charles Hatfield. He was called the moisture accelerator guy. So he started creating rain. And then we look to the 1940s. We can look at projects, Cyrus Project, Storm Fury. This was cyclone mitigation and hurricane propagation. Then we can look at Operation Large Area Coverage. That was the 1950s, wherein they were spraying zinc cadmium sulfide over populations. And we can go on and on. The real biggie, Stephen, was Operation Popeye. That was the 1960s, and the Viet Cong trade routes were flooded out by the U.S. military. This was very classified. What happened was, and the only reason why this information was leaked is someone left a memo on a desk. They found it regarding this operation, and they had to come clean on it. So it was a $20 million operation, and later entitled Operation Popeye. So that actually spurred on something called the NMOD Treaty. President Carter ratified that. And so, but the problem is with these treaties, Stephen, they have no teeth. They cannot, there's no enforcements. So nothing, they won't work. And this, a good example of some legislation we have a Weather Modification Act in Canada. You can find it on the Justice Laws website. There's legislation. We also have a treaty with ourselves and the US. It's an exchange treaty on weather modification activities. So what the US can do, they can come into our borders and spray within 200 miles, and we can do the same. Carte blanche. And so this is why this is just criminal. There's no informed consent. And this is why we look at, we don't live in a democracy. We don't live in the times, 50, 60 years ago. This is silent, quiet bio warfare applied to citizens. And gotta wake up to it. Gotta wake up to it.
Yeah, it sounds excellent. And another point which you mentioned, it's not only the warfare, it's becoming corporatized now. There's actually companies out there offering geoengineering as a service. It could be to a large farming outlet, business.
Absolutely.
Right?
And you can get a rain-free wedding day for, I don't remember how much it was, $30,000 or something. Oliver's Travels offers it in the UK. So, you can mess up the climate just for your wedding. So the self-indulgence and the narcissism that's going on in this, it's awful.
It's pretty terrible, everyone. And plus the contaminants, right? There's a lot of aluminum particles and other particles you mentioned that are getting into our food systems, the water. They're harming wildlife. They're contaminating everything.
Yes, we're having colony collapses, our bees, our birds, our fish.
Okay.
and our trees. And what's really interesting to note, Stephen, is if they cared so much about this CO2 global warming, they plant more trees, because trees store carbon. They store carbon and water, and they filter out so much, and they're cutting them down. They're cutting forestry, 5G. So this, again, lies, more lies.
Yeah, and look at this. And we talked about last week, everyone, mass immigration. You know what that's doing? That's cutting our trees down. They're taking over farmland, right? It's so there's so many inconsistencies in policy. Mm-hmm. One minute they say they support climate change, and while at the same time they're supporting mass immigration, which is only encouraging climate change.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense.
They're talking out of both sides of their mouth.
Yeah, exactly. People are getting played. The Canadian people are getting played. Yeah. I just want to get to a question here. We got a lot of comments. Here it is right here. Someone's asking, is it true that geoengineering is being done to combat climate change? And you've already addressed that, right?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that the main purpose of it now, or is it that was its initial purpose?
I think when it first started, I mean, this is all an experiment. It's been an ongoing experiment for decades, but we can look at Alana Freeland's 7 agendas. She lists 7 agendas in her book, Stephen.
Okay.
I can name a good amount of them. They're weather modification activities, geophysical restructuring. That's a biggie, because that's disaster capitalism. So when you looked at Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Sandy in the States, they completely restructured and decimated those ports. So that there's biological operations. I indicated everything they're being sprayed, right? And then also there's the military application of C4, command and control communications and cyber warfare. And with these clouds, I told you they create these cirrus clouds through the metals. The beautiful big fluffy clouds we used to see, which really don't exist anymore. They can't play their war games through those. The cirrus clouds, they can. They've got all the metals, all the heaters. So much easier to do the war game.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, and I think I mentioned biological operations, right?
Right.
Yeah, and exotic propulsion detection systems. There's quite a number of interesting agendas there. So, but all bad, all counter against humanity.
Yeah. I just want to get back to this question, just because for the average Canadian, they're looking up at the sky and it looks blue to them. Mm-hmm. But as far as you're concerned, based on your research over decades, would you say that most of Canada's sky is getting covered? Is that what you're proposing? Or is it just, again, would it be just pockets or?
I think it's the whole of Canada. And I would love someone to maybe comment, because I've got a big Facebook group of 5,000 people. There's a lot of Canadians in there. They send us pictures, and the skies are whited out in every province that I can see. I don't think it's pockets, because this is not just a Canadian agenda. It's a global agenda. They're not going to leave any stone untouched. They're not.
Yeah. And again, would you argue too, if they're doing this, again, that doesn't make sense, a carbon tax? Because you would think this would be dealing with so-called climate change and global warming, right?
Well, it's important for people to know, and this is another crazy thing. They're spraying us with carbon. So, and you can see the patents on my website, carbon nanotubes. Carbon nanotubes are being found in children's lungs. And the problem with these metals and the things they're spraying are that they're on a nano level, Stephen. They're so small that we can't excrete them. Anything smaller than a micron, our body does not recognize it. Our immune system doesn't recognize it. So we're all being laden in these metals, and we're not getting rid of them. So this is why we're seeing terrible health effects like Alzheimer's, respiratory illnesses. These particles are lodging in our lungs, our brain. And so the barium, the strontium, the aluminum, those are huge brain issues, bone issues, heart issues. And this is what's breaking people down. And you see people aren't healthy. You look around, people are not growing old, aging gracefully. They're young, they're breaking down, and some are just simply dropping dead. Cancers are being accelerated. I know people are getting stage 4 cancers in the blink of an eye. Autoimmune illnesses are rampant. We never had autoimmune years ago. So this is all from the weaponization of our world and through the genetic engineering of our planet. Everything is being genetically engineered.
Yeah, and so everyone, genetic engineering, a good layman's term for that is chemical farming, right? A chemical, plus with the gene splitting coupled with chemical farming.
Chemical farming and as well the spraying, because there's the stuff in there is genetically mutating. I mean, it's changing your DNA. It's changing us. It's changing what it means to be a human being. They're damaging us.
Toxifying our environment, aren't they? Our food supply. And this is happening, everyone. We want mandatory GMO labeling, and we want it phased out. That's what our party stands for. You know, this is killing our us in the long term, right? Our kids, their future generations. What are they going to have? Well, I guess I'll go to this question. Someone's asking, who are the main culprits in creating the climate engineering actions? And what is their end game, Suzanne?
Well, I think their end game really is this, you know, dystopian global electromagnetic prison camp. And that's a sad thing. It's people smart enough to run the machines, but dumb enough to just follow the orders. They do not want critical thinkers. And this is why our water is fluoridated. So it, you know, it decimates our pineal gland, and why they're poisoning us, because a sickened, subservient population cannot think, cannot react, and cannot fight back.
Wow. And so this ties in Agenda 21 and global.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Agenda 21 is all about huge wealth redistribution. It's all this fuzzy rhetoric, you know, sustainability, biodiversity. But this is tracking, monitoring, assessing, and charging us for everything. So when you look at something that's, they say smart, Stephen, that means surveillance. And that, again, that will be the Internet of Things, that everything will be connected to everything else. And then all the data will be put up probably into some massive quantum computer so they can look at it and monitor us along with the smart dust they're spraying. So yeah, this is big data, or a big brother on steroids.
Yeah. So how does Canada fit in this globalist picture? Because from our perspective, it seems like we're like a pilot country.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think that North America has been hit hardest, yes. And I think they began the experimentation way, you know, probably in the 60s. And a lot of it's frequency too, Stephen. The 60s with the music, and then the 70s with the GMOs, the vaccines, you know, the 20th century with the cell phones. So there's always been a new weapon of choice every decade. And yes, I believe we've been hit hard because we're one of the few countries that are still eating GMOs, drinking fluoridated water. So in that case, yes, absolutely. And when you look at California right now, seems to be the acid test to bring in all these agendas. They're doing these litmus tests to see how people are going to react. So they're droughting California. They're implementing Agenda 21. They're forcing vaccines. And so the agenda in the U.S. is a little farther along. I'd say Canada maybe 10 years behind them, but we're still in quick lockstep with them for the exact same agenda, because this is a global totalitarian agenda spearheaded by the United Nations and then implemented by the military-industrial complex. And so then there's a lot of players involved with that as well. So
yeah, and you could easily, you know, what we've seen is these politicians in Ottawa are just stringed to corporate globalists on so many different levels, right?
Yeah, and that's what I think. I think Canada at this stage, it's sad, but it's no more than a protectionist racket. And this is, to me, like mafia dons running Canada, because they're not protecting.
Yes.
Stephen, we didn't consent to the fluoride. We didn't consent to the GMOs, the spraying, the vaccinations, and the 5G that's coming up. So we haven't consented to any of this.
The mass immigration, the banking, the carbon tax, on and on.
Yeah, there's a complete loss of freedom and rights, and it doesn't matter at this stage, you know, who's in office, left or right. It's the families are still the same. The Trudeau, who wants those? You know, same thing. So we've got to break that pattern. We've got to see this for what it is, and that's breaking through the psychosocial control. And we've been indoctrinated right since birth, through from schooling, and to believe their lies. So
yeah, and the indoctrination is on so many levels. Like I said, last week we did mass immigration, and that's just full of indoctrination. Because part of the globalism agenda, Agenda 21, is this mass immigration turning Canada in what we call a post-national globalist village. And it's happening right before our eyes. And it's been going on since the 1960s, Suzanne. Yeah. So we're all going to be divided. There's going to be ethnic enclaves everywhere. We're going to have, division on religious grounds, ethnic grounds, cultural grounds, right? Then you get all the disinformation from the media, and then you get the they're toxifying our food. It already is, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense though. To the average person, they may think this is crazy, right? Why would they do this to their own people? But it is happening. Everyone knows it.
And that's when I say look back on history, because history shows they have not been kind. The governments have not been kind. You can look at Gulf War syndrome. You can look at human radiation experiments. You can look at, they even show, there's videos online, Stephen, wherein they show experimentation on soldiers in World War I and II. They use phosgene and chlorine on them, and they're coming out of these areas coughing and hacking and mustard gas. So these were chemical corpse experimentations. We're all in a petri dish. This has never stopped.
It's never stopped. Wow.
Never stopped.
Wow. Unbelievable. So I just want to get back. So you support rescinding the carbon taxation, right? It's
absolutely.
It's putting financial burden on our families and our businesses. It doesn't make sense.
And the whole thing, how is taxing carbon going to help our how is taxing humanity going to help the ecosystem? Making us pay, the polluters pay principle. And you look at, I'm just quickly look at the irresponsible ways, even our oil is shipped out to Texas, and we don't refine our own oil, shipped back to Canada, and then it's doubled. You can go to the US and their gas is half the price. So why are we tolerating this kind of thing? That's not free trade. That's again, thievery. It's extortion. Exactly. They're extorting. This is an extortion.
But we would argue that there's just weak, incompetent politicians that are bought out, that are allowing it, right? So,
and basically they people rely on it's easier just not to tell the truth, because their jobs are going to be jeopardized if someone comes out and says, you know what, they're geoengineering the skies. But what's interesting too is Paul Hellyer, I'm sure you know who he is, our former environment minister, or defense minister, sorry. He's openly talked about geoengineering and HAARP, and he calls them the two evil Siamese twins of death and destruction. So he's talked about it, and also a premier in BC, Bill Vonderzam. So he actually got, through freedom of information, he got documents from the Canadian government attesting to the fact that they are spraying. There was a lot of redacted bits and blacked out portions.
Right.
But he got the germane section of it. So
it's pretty much a covert operation, would you say? Like, because we don't know the funding of it, or
the bigger ones, definitely, like the full-scale global agenda. But when you look at things like Weather Modification Inc., who I just mentioned, they have clients here in Canada. Smaller scales, they're spraying silver iodide. That's so old, Stephen. And still, and they're saying it's not. But
okay, so I'm going to shift to Jordan here. Suzanne, he says, I just spent a year in Costa Rica last November, February, which is summer there, and normally dry, was just like the rainy season. My Costa Rican cleaning lady, who is 65, said she's never seen a summer like that in her life. Is that a coincidence, or could that be some geoengineering?
Well, what they're doing is they're disrupting the hydrological cycles with this geoengineering. So I don't think that's unusual at all. I have been to Costa Rica myself, and I did see them spraying, and they were spraying over the ocean. I didn't see it on land, so it was coming in from the ocean. So they're definitely spraying there.
So that would kind of make sense, because probably in the summer they get a drought. So if they can create rain, right, it's going to be good for their crops.
Yeah, it's all manipulation, absolutely. And if for instance Costa Rica gets out of line for some reason, they can induce a flood, a hurricane, an earthquake. When they flooded Texas, I mean, Texas is a real libertarian state, and they don't go along to get along. They're anti-Agenda 21. They're gun loving. They wanted their gold back. I guess the Federal Reserve has a good amount of their gold, and so they push back, and the United Nations do not like people that push back. So
just like Hungary, right? Hungary and Poland now, in the EU, they don't want all the migrants coming in, right? And that's pushing back because it's so many different levels. It's not just environment, right?
No, it's a global destabilization, because they want a third world. They want a third world, world wherein they control it and where they're indentured servants. So
sure, I'm going to look. Rose Stevens, she says there are actually patents on geoengineering.
Absolutely,
this is a fact. So you guys, everyone, don't get caught up in conspiracy. That's just a way to. Sometimes it's a way to.
It's a weapon. Again, it's a weapon.
Yeah, a weapon against people from getting informed. So, at the NCA, we're going to look at any issue and judge it based on facts. So, and
there's 150 patents at the very least. And what's really interesting is there was an experience in Espanola, Ontario here, where a native community was heavily sprayed. 550 people. They all came down with very severe flu-like symptoms. They were taking pictures of United States Air Force tankers up above this area. It was a former police officer who was doing this. Anyway, the spraying, they found very fine nano aluminum particulates, and it matched the patent, the 10 micron level of the stratospheric reduction of global warming. There's a patent, an exact patent that matched that micron level of the people being sickened and sprayed in Espanola, Ontario. So again, no consent, no knowledge of this. They just go and spray and see what happens, and it's terrible. It's really terrible.
Wow. Mm-hmm. What would you like from us? Would you want us to at least have a moratorium on this?
There has to be a dialogue, Stephen, about this issue, because the thing is, all the conferences are not subject really to public debate. You kind of have to elbow your way in there, and sometimes get removed. Yeah. You know what? We need to know if we're being sprayed.
Exactly. And so, it's very sad, everyone. You can see that we don't really have a democracy in Canada. No. As far as we're concerned, there's a four-party conglomerate, and they're all just part of the same entity. Yeah. And there's no dialogue. There's no dialogue on the geoengineering. There's no dialogue on mass immigration. There's no dialogue on of changing Canada from a bilingual country into this extreme multicultural country we have today. There was no dialogue. Even the charter, Suzanne, there was no dialogue. There's no vote of the people.
No.
So this is all top down, being pushed on the people, and this is unacceptable. So, we have to fight back. And if we don't, it's just going to get worse for your families and future generations. And this is the honest truth. Do not believe what you're hearing in the media. It's all been manipulated, Susan. Disinformation. And I think probably, Suzanne, when they attack something very aggressively, let's say mass immigration, like you can't talk against that, right? You're completely labeled, just like geoengineering. If you bring it up, you're labeled. Yes. So those are probably so that should be a red flag that you should be looking further into those subjects.
Well, the thing is, if we're a democratic country, there shouldn't be this censorship and this weaponization of words. Our words have become weapons. And I ask, everyone when I do interviews and stuff, that we move beyond the term conspiracy theory. It's such a negative term. And I have been providing blatant facts here that these these operations exist. So let's move beyond that term, and we can all agree that there's something very strange going on and our planet's being turfed. So let's all come together, lose that divide that they've created, right? Lose that divide, come together and work together on solutions, because we can stop this.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, Risa Upton, she says the problems are so many people are brainwashed into believing we have a climate change problem. Suzanne, how can we expose this lie to the general public? That's what she was asking.
Yeah, that's a good question, Risa. And I think basically it's just the education and showing people where this stemmed from, and show that Maurice Strong, founder of the IPCC, implemented this. I'm going to give you a quote from Maurice Strong. Let me see if I can find it here. Really good quote. And this really shows the agenda, Stephen, way back when in the 70s. He said that current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class, involving high meat intake, consumption of large amounts of frozen and convenience foods, ownership of motor vehicles, golf courses, small electrical appliances, home and workplace air conditioning, and suburban housing are not sustainable. And so isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized civilization collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about?
Wow.
So that's from the 1970s. It goes back that far. So if you can show people, the facts on climate change, and that CO2 is not the tail that wags the dog, and that 95% of our greenhouse gas is water vapor, and infinitesimal 0.04% is CO2, and just show them facts, and give them good sources. And that's what I do. And I always have something to give somebody. If I'm bringing up the subject, I'll have a brochure, I'll have a business card, I have movies, give them some information. So it's some tangible information and facts that they can look at. And there's a really good scientist, and I recommend people on the climate change problem, look at Dr. Tim Ball. He's in BC. And he talks very openly about the climate change lie. And again, of course, he's been maligned and demonized about this.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if someone retorts, the Arctic?
Yes.
The glaciers are all melting. We're going to have sea level rise. So how would you respond to that?
Well, the thing is, too, I think, again, there's a real geopolitical agenda behind them melting the Arctic, Stephen. There's 13% of our oil reserves are underneath that ice.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Yeah. And so, if they melt that Arctic, which they've talked about doing, even in the 70s, they talked about melting the Arctic. They've got all those open trade routes. So basically what's going on there right now in the Arctic is a Cold War for the resources. And it's been also shown that they've been spraying black soot there all over the ice to melt the ice. And if you're using ionospheric heaters, Stephen, you can do anything, because this radiation is so powerful, particle beaming billions of watts. You can easily take care of that. Ice.
So it wouldn't surprise you if this was
created.
The melting was human created.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it just feeds the climate change narrative, then, right? Oh, it's melting, right?
And then so when you see
amazing,
yeah,
incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get back to here. I just want to deal with Jordan. He's making a good point. He says, I don't agree with slaughtering humans, because in some sense, that's what you're saying, right? It's more of a long-term slaughter where they're contaminating humans, right?
I think it's a slow boil in the frogs.
Right.
Right.
He says, he's right. He says the earth is overpopulated and it's only increasing. And it needs a reduction in the size of the population. Suzanne, that's his opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I just want to add something from last week, because what we learned is, this mass immigration is only encouraging everyone more overpopulation in those countries where these people are coming from. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, we're overpopulating our country.
Mm-hmm.
You see that, everyone? That's why we say we want a temporary pause, substantial reduction in immigration. It's harming our economy, our environment, our society. It's fueling overpopulation in the world, right, Suzanne?
Exactly. And what they're doing too, Stephen, is they're creating what they call climate refugees. And they say there's going to be millions upon millions of climate refugees with this onslaught of climate chaos and global warming. So they're creating this chaotic situation. And of course, they're going to have the remedy, right? The Hegelian dialect. But yeah, they're creating these climate refugees. And so Canada's being inundated and other countries are being inundated with these people because they're creating this instability and the war as well. Yeah.
But also it feeds the post-national globalist agenda, right? Mm-hmm. Where they want all cultures here, all ethnic groups. We're all divided. We're just a globalist village.
Yes. That we talk about the global village. That's what the United Nations talks about the global.
Well, that's what we're turning into in Canada.
Yes.
You can see it happening every day. There's enclaves forming every day. We have a prime minister that says he doesn't know what our identity is. Mm. He doesn't know what our culture is or our heritage, right? He called us a post-national state. It's happening, everyone. This is but it's been going on for decades. It's not just this government. No. And that's where people get fooled.
Yeah. He's just a minion following the New World Order dictates. He has no power. I mean, none of our politicians have power. They're just simply minions to the larger picture. So he's just following orders. He's just an order follower.
Exactly. He's on a big string. So we basically lost our democracy here, would you say? Because all these politicians are strained and they're just following the corporate globalists and the international agenda, right?
They're as I say, I think they're no better than mafia dons. They're protecting
exactly.
They're protecting themselves and their spoils, and to heck with the Canadians and what we need and want. And it's just the dangers of what's happening here are coming home to roost. I mean, they really are.
I just want to get back to Risa here, and there's a few other things we need to talk about. Risa Upton says, Suzanne, most people are not aware of geoengineering; they just think it's jet fuel.
Yes, they do. That's where the balanced dialogue comes into play, and education. And the thing is, I ask people to look up, Stephen, and because I remember sun. We're getting global dimming now. I remember a blue sky. I remember that azure blue sky. I asked people to remember what we had, and we've lost it. And scientists even say we're getting 22% less sunlight because of pollution and global dimming. So we have to look at that. And the geoengineering components, I'm sure, are in the jet fuel as well. There's a professor in Sweden who did some testing on jet fuel, and there was high levels of aluminum and barium in it. So, it could be coming from the nozzles, it could be coming from the jet fuel, or a combination of both. But, the thing is education. And I find too, even if someone poo-poos it and says, I don't believe that, be prepared for them to come back because you've tweaked their interest. And another thing is with my billboards. My billboards have created such a groundswell of education. I know they've woken up millions of people. I get messages. I'm inundated with messages every day thanking me for these messages. And I don't think there's anything more important. The thing we have to do, and this is to Riz as well, make the subject visible. We have to make the subject visible, and I won't go away. And I know there's a lot of other passionate activists who won't go away either. So find your voice, continue talking about it, share information, get groups together, and start doing things that resonate with you. Whatever you're good at, then go out and do.
Yeah, I just want to get back to Risa here. I heard that Donald Trump was going to put an end to chemtrail activities. I can't confirm that, but that's what Risa. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, I can say no, categorically no, because I believe it was March, he instituted the Weather Research Forecast and Innovation Act in the U.S., and this gives them carte blanche to continue geoengineering. And yes, he says climate change isn't real, but he's never given any context to let us know what's behind that. So the thing is, we cannot look at our politicians as saviors. They are not saviors. He is an elite just like all the other elites, and he's doing a job and they're telling him what to do. So they're not going to tell Donald Trump to put an end to geoengineering. This is an agenda that's been put in place decades ago, and they need them. Chemtrails and HARP are like the bread and butter, and throw in the 5G. They have to continue it until it collapses.
Sure. And okay, here's another question we should address. Can hot air balloons be used to scoop up air samples below airplane contrails to analyze the air samples for foreign matter?
Well, even if it wasn't air, you can always do your soil and water and hair analysis as well.
Right, right.
I can't confirm that. I'm sure at a certain level. I know Michael J. Murphy, who made What in the World Are They Spraying? Why in the World Are They Spraying? He was going to do that experiment. He was going to actually go up in a plane and get a test sample. That didn't materialize, but I'm sure they can. I think that's doable. It takes a lot of money.
All right. Okay. There's this one guy, Brian Brecken. He says he's having real issues with this, and there may be more people like him. But his issue is, why would the government or these organizations poison their own children? Well, a lot of people ask that question, and I say because this is an anti-human agenda, and they don't care. These are established families that have had this put in play for a long time. They don't care about their families. And also, never forget, if they're creating something, dollars to donuts, they're going to have the remedy for themselves to fix any issues that come about for them. And I often tell people, I know an activist, and he was speaking to a scientist, and the scientist was telling him that they were working on ways to mop up aluminum in the brain. So the standard Joe is not going to be privy to that kind of medical aid. This is going to be for the elites. Also, the elites use homeopathic medicine. They eat organic food. I'm sure they have $50,000 air filtration systems. They have means and ways and monetary availability to make their situation much better than ours. There's a question here. Would not everyone, including the creators of geoengineering programs, suffer? Why would they want to do that?
Because it's an anti-human agenda. And as and as I said, they do not care. These aren't regular people like you and I that have empathy, that care about the planet.
Yep, fair enough. Yeah. I want to change this. I want to shift to 5G wireless. I think people need to know about that.
Okay.
Can we just give people an introduction?
Yeah.
So that's with wireless. That's a new powerful wireless program that's coming.
Yeah, right now they're rolling it out in the U.S. I think there's been 11 states that have unfortunately received this. I know California, again, another litmus test for them. But 5G stands for fifth generation wireless. These are small millimeter waves. This was military technology sold to the telecommunications industry, military tech. So people need to get that militarized, then commercialized. So powerful, Stephen, that it's been used in crowd control. It can make people fall down, scream, run away. It's so powerful. These are small millimeter waves. We're looking at 24 to 90 gigahertz. So when people need to get that this is billions of oscillations a second. So think about 90 billion hammers on your body. And it's that continual pulsing. This is an equation. This is going to change, decimate people's health. I mean, people were having issues with 3G and 4G and getting cancer. But this is ultimately more dangerous, and these waves don't travel well. They don't travel because they're so small. They don't travel through walls. So basically, our environment is affected. They affect our water and in the atmosphere. They affect our trees, and so our whole environment is going to be radiated. And no human health or impact studies. And this again will be through the Internet of Things. Everything through the Internet of Things is connected through actuators, sensors, and networks, and it's going to be using the 5G. When you look at the FCCC, Tom Wheeler, the former chair, has said he would not wait for the federal standards. They're rolling it out. So to heck with the health impact studies. And he says that everything will be connected from pill bottles to plant waters. That is very disturbing, because then you look, well, how would they be connecting pill bottles and plant waters? Well, that would be through the smart dust that they're spraying on us. So again, this really goes deeper into the AI, artificial intelligence, which is another issue, which is making machines intelligent. That's what AI is, but they want to actually merge us with the machine through the smart dust that they're spraying, through the 5G, the frequencies. The health impacts of 5Gs are, I mean, the sweat ducts act like antennas, so our skin's going to be radiated. There's a brain barrier permeability. There's ocular damage, heart damage, plant damage, bacterial resistance. Water molecules are affected. So it's going to destabilize water, and I think oxygen. I think that's the other 2.4 gigahertz that we're on now. So this is what we're looking at with this 5G. I think it could even be more dangerous than the geoengineering, because these boxes, we're going to be on hydro poles, they're going to be on school, and they're going to be so close together because the waves are so short, they don't travel well. So every 500 feet or so, they're going to have a big black box, or it's going to be on an electrical pole or a street lamp, and we're all going to be radiated 24/7 with this 5G. And again, no one consented to this. And to have no environmental health or impact studies on this, there's actually a lawsuit going on in Quebec right now, and they're suing the Quebec government for failure to protect people from these EMF frequencies. Health Canada has done a grave injustice to us by not they haven't regulated these EMFs, and they haven't even told us that they're dangerous and what we can do to mitigate them. You know? And so, yeah, that's basically 5G. And the thing is, no one's monitoring this technological innovation except the military, and they're using it for their own vile dictates. So this should be very disturbing to people that the foxes really are running the hen house, and they're just, giving it to the telecommunications company who's obviously going to make billions of dollars on this.
So this is going to link into mass surveillance as well, the 5G.
Absolutely. Yeah. It all connects, Stephen, to AI, the Internet of Things, D-Wave quantum computer. A Canadian guy just invented that a short time ago. They want all our data uploaded into these big quantum computers so they can control us, watch us, surveil us, and also through the smart dust that they're spraying too. These are going to be in our bodies, and there's a good a YouTube video on smart dust by Tanker Enemy and what they're doing with this. And the smart dust has 24/7 GPS tracking capabilities, and we're ingesting this through our food, water, and air. And what these scientists are saying is, people are saying, well, what happens if someone swallows it? And well, basically you just cough it or spit it out. Don't worry about it. We're ingesting tiny microprocessors, and they're talking about it like as casually as drinking a cup of coffee. So this is insanity. It's out of control. AI needs to be stopped. The AI agenda, man merging with machine, and all the electric cars as well emit a lot low frequency. All these things. I mean, we're inundated with so many different radiations, different waves. Our body cannot adapt to this. Our body cannot adapt to 5G. If it was maybe done incrementally over a period of time. But you cannot force this kind of radiation on someone. I mean, it's going to break them down. And also with children using this wireless tech in schools, putting these laptops on their laps, it's going to make them infertile and give them health issues as well as brain tumors because they're putting them to their heads. Yeah, the radiation is a real big issue.
Yeah, exactly. With 5G, it's so much more powerful. Everyone, look it up. As far as I could see, it's at least 15 times powerful. It's at 30 gigahertz.
Oh, it goes up to 90 because you look at 3G.
It does, eh? Okay.
3G is 3 gigahertz, 4G is 4 gigahertz, and 5G is kind of deceptive because you'd figure 5 gigahertz, but it's 24 to 90 gigahertz. Right. Because people need to know we oscillate at almost 8 oscillations per second. That's our frequency. We're electromagnetic, we're chemical, and they're throwing this radiation at us that's 90 billion oscillations.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to freak the Canadian people out here tonight. Just take this information, do your own research. But what you're being fed in the media is not really what's going on. Then this is the truth. The government is dishonest with you, and so just do your own research, and through this information you can help protect your family.
Yeah, there's
decisions. Some people can't handle this, Susan. They get a reaction, right? They can't handle it.
The comfort zone.
Well, yeah, and their bubble, right?
Yes.
Their comfort bubble is exploding, right? So then they react, and they call you names. They may call me names, right? But listen, everyone, we're just trying to share the truth tonight, and talk about issues that are, that there's a lot of evidence that they're going on. And 5G is a fact. No one can deny that. It is coming. And I'm going to add this point, Suzanne. The government is actually pushing AI on the Canadian people without even consulting them. They want to turn Canada into a super AI state. They even said that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And
this is going on, everyone. So, I'm sorry for those people who can't handle the truth, but, get over it.
Yes,
be strong inside and
yeah. And
that's
the thing, Stephen, is, and I've seen this so much, is the people that react, if they're angry, they're reacting out of fear, because this is a discomforting subject. Right, but I'd rather know than not know, because you know what? The thing is, once these people get over that anger and they realize it might be true, then they see that they have to do something about it. People have been too complacent and comfortable in their daily rations of food and TV and sports.
Yeah.
This has been given to us to distract us from looking at these issues and dealing with it. And this is why we're in the situation we're in, because people are afraid or complacent.
Yeah, or brainwashed too, right?
Brainwashed, apathetic.
Yeah, apathetic.
Dumbed down.
And they have their little comfort zones, and but it doesn't, the food they're eating may not, right? It's making them sick, right?
Well, yeah, it's making them sick. I mean, the fluoride is closing up their pineal gland.
So I'm gonna come back here, because this one guy was freaking out tonight.
Okay.
And he goes, "Why would they poison our own people, our own kids?"
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's talk about Monsanto, everyone. There's widespread chemical farming going on in Canada. Health Canada has been tied to these big globalist corporations, and so has the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. It's well documented. Yeah. So it is happening. This is toxic food. There's all kinds of herbicides, and there's gene splitting. Most of the corn in Canada is GMO. There's no mandatory labeling in Canada. The canola is almost 100% GMO, and then we get into soya, right?
Yeah.
Soya and wheat, on and on.
Yeah.
This is happening, everyone. So we can put our heads in the sand, go back to our TVs and pretend everything's good. But, as our party, we have a mandate to look at these issues. So.
And I really appreciate that, Stephen.
Yeah, well, we have to.
Yeah, you do.
And, this 5G is a real thing. And do you want to touch on Monsanto, how it connects into this?
Monsanto, I think, really is a really deep insider in this equation. They have, some patents, and their seeds can live in non-living environmental factors. So abiotic, drought, stress resistant. They've got an aluminum sorghum patent. So again, that is a real awakening factor, that they know what's being sprayed on us, so they can make a seed to resist what's being sprayed. So
wow, amazing.
They're a deep insider. And so, and disaster capitalism at its helm, because if, for example, in Haiti, they had that big earthquake, or, they devastated Haiti. And so Monsanto comes in and brings in the seed, the Trojan horse, right? They're the savior. So they're coming in saying that they're going to save the day. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at GMOs, they're so dangerous. And why would we want to eat something from a company that's made DDTs, PCBs, asbestos, and Agent Orange. They are a chemical company, and they're masquerading as a food supplier. They are criminal, as criminal in this as you can get. Also, glyphosate is a known carcinogen. So what they're doing, Stephen, they're creating these genetically mutated seeds. They're spraying them with glyphosates and pesticides, further carcinogenic, and then to further embed those adulterations, they're spraying the chemtrails on the food. So they're toxic beyond toxic.
I'm sorry, everyone look into this. The GMO, Monsanto's, very clear. That's all factual. Mm-hmm. There's actually Terminator seeds that they've produced now to control the seed population. There's seeds that actually create infertility, isn't there?
Well, what they're doing is creating infertility through the genetic mutations of our food. Right. So, absolutely.
Right. Okay, excellent. I'm going to just get to some of these questions. Excellent job tonight, Susan. Like I said, for some people, this may be really hard to digest, but just do your own research, and if it's wrong, it's wrong. A lot of this is confirmed. It's going on, and
I encourage people, Stephen, to look at my website. I have so many patents and YouTubes, documents, doctors talking about it, books. So I encourage people to go to byebybluesky.com. They can also look at the health impacts of what this is doing to people. So it's all there in black and white.
Okay, so I'll just get to a few questions here. Lloyd, thank you, Lloyd, for joining us tonight and having an open mind. He's asking, assuming all this is true, what could Little Canada do about it?
When he says what little, I think we can do a lot. And that's the problem. They made us believe we are powerless, and we don't have power. And this is where we've got to lose this divide they've created, come together and figure out solutions. There is legislation being created in Rhode Island as we speak right now. We could use that framework here in Canada if it passes. They're trying to legislate not only the geoengineering, but the electromagnetic pollution. So that is huge. That's in Rhode Island, and it's waiting on the House floor as a bill. We can look at that. There's another fellow, Jim Lee. He's attached an addendum to the ENMOD Treaty. I think it's called the Environmental Modification Accountability Act, wherein there's safeguards, there's checks and balances for what they're doing. I say to people, go out and do whatever moves you. When I first found out about this, I was kind of, well, what do I do? And so I did what resonates with me. I'm creative. I formed a group. I have administration skills. So I formed a group. I got out. I did outreach and go out and just talk to people about it and get groups together in your home. Talk to your officials. Do whatever moves you, but just keep talking about it. Keep the dialogue open and make the subject visible. Put a lawn sign on your lawn. There's a lot of people doing that. Use bumper stickers. Wear T-shirts. Share information. Get some videos and have a video night with people. There's so many things you can do. You just have to be creative, but don't feel helpless. Because the thing is, this is a program. What they've created is a program. This is a program that's designed to fail. And so once we come together, this will fall upon the weight of its own lies. And this is what I believe, because it's not sustainable. Rome fell. This is a technocratic agenda that they're trying to impose on us. And it will fall because it's not built on truth, love, or anything. It's built on lies and anti-humanism. So just get out there and start working it, which is what I did.
Okay, and here's Marlene. She says, I'm just listening to this and I'm really shocked that the government is doing this and doesn't care. Shocked.
Yeah, it is shocking. And when I first found out about it, you know what, Stephen, it's almost a grieving process because everything we believe to be true is a lie. Our governments are not our friends. Our governments are not protecting us. Again, look at history. Look at all the experimentation that they've done in the past.
Yeah, well, everyone, we can see all the different levels of what's happening to our country right now.
Yeah.
And right now we're heading into a post-national globalist village. This is a fact. And then you can add all this environmental stuff going on with the geoengineering, with the chemical farming, the widespread chemical farming in Canada, right? And then we're going to add in here 5G and AI, which is coming, everyone. And we could lose up to 50% of our jobs in Canada. This is what's coming, everyone. We're having no dialogue on any of this. All right. So today we're trying to initiate a dialogue because that's what NCA stands for. We're going to look at any issue that's impacting the Canadian people and deal with it. We're not going to just sweep it under, right? We don't have strings. We're not tied to corporate globalists, right? So that's a positive step, isn't it, Suzanne?
Absolutely, absolutely. And sharing this information, this is huge, and getting it out there, because you know what, it's a trickle effect. And
so
I always say I'm a seed dropper. When people ask me what to do, I'm dropping.
Sure.
And if you pick them up, that's great. And if you don't, someone else will pick them up.
Okay, I just want to get to another comment here. It says here that 3G, 4G was created with human wireless communication in mind, Suzanne. But 5G seems to have been created with machines in mind, dangerous levels of radiation.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
That's basically what you were saying, everyone. This isn't made up, everyone.
No.
5G is coming within probably the next 5 years.
That's what they're saying. 2000.
It's coming, everyone, and the radiation is gonna be intense.
And, you know, I encourage people to look at Elon Musk, because Elon Musk is really a front guy for this information. And he was talking about how it's important for us to merge with machine. It's essential because we were going to have the intelligence of house cats if we don't merge with machine. So what he's talking about, Stephen, is something called neural lace. They implant the sensor in your brain to connect you with you know, the mind cloud or whatever they're planning on doing. But he said that the only thing they weren't able to do this was because of bandwidth. But now that they have the bandwidth with 5G, they can connect these sensors implanted in your mind with the 5G. So the 5G is the linchpin to all this, the AI, the smart does, this transhumanism, the singularity, all this AI man merging with machine stuff. 5G is the linchpin to bring it in. The linchpin.
Yeah, exactly. And also the linchpin for more control.
Yes.
Mass surveillance, everything. Everyone, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Smart cars, smart meters. This is all on wireless.
Yeah.
The government has immediate access to your car, to your house. You know, apparently there's mileage tax coming, everyone. Once everyone's driving a smart car, they're going to charge a mileage tax. Suzanne, have you heard that?
I haven't.
Apparently they're testing that in California.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, can you believe it, eh? And so I just want to get back here. And Marlene is back. She says, no wonder I feel sick after I've had dinner sometimes. I always think that food wasn't fresh. So it's not what it seems, especially with GMO, right? It can look like a perfect tomato, but
it can. And you know what I encourage people to do, Stephen, is get a 60x microscope, a little 60x microscope you can get on eBay for whatever, $5, and you can see all the genetic mutations from food. Marlene, please look at my website for detox ways you can mitigate the toxic fallout. They work. I use them. So there's a health section on my website.
And Lloyd here says, I have no problem with anyone saying the government lies. That's positive, right? Mm-hmm. And then he says, I see it every day. CBC is bad. Yeah. It's basically state propaganda, right?
Absolutely. It's mainstream media pushing propaganda, and it's for an objective. Yeah. Exactly.
And they get their money, most of it, from the government. So we want to sell off the CBC. That's one of our policies, everyone. And we're going to save the taxpayers over $10 billion over 10 years. So I'm just going to go here. Risa says, are there any truthful scientists that would be willing to confront the government on all these issues? And there was a scientist, Suzanne. He died, unfortunately. Shiva. Was it Shiva Chopra?
I haven't heard of that person.
He wrote the book Corrupt to the Core. he actually, Risa, he exposed Health Canada and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and how they're bought out to Monsanto and all these companies.
Interesting.
He did a book. He did a book on that. He said they were completely corrupt to the core.
I'll look at him. There is a fellow in California named Dr. Marvin J. Herndon. He's been talking about this. He's very open about it. So hopefully he's gotten some traction.
Yeah, excellent. And I'm just going to shift down here. I don't understand this. What Lloyd's saying, maybe you understand. He says, Alexa is scary enough for me. Oh, maybe the car?
Yeah, well, it's that voice, the AI voice.
The AI voice. Is that what they have in the...
Yeah, giving directions and asking Alexa where something is. And again, it's an AI, directive, gives you information. Again, it's making us subservient to the AI because the AI, they look at that as their god, Stephen. And even one of the former executives of Google just formed the AI Church, the Church of AI.
Wow.
This is their god.
Wow, that's scary. And it's coming, and we have a prime minister that wants to turn us, quote, into a super AI state. Not to mention, this post-national globalist village, right? So this is all going on, everyone. Discuss this with your family. Get more informed, share this, talk about it, right, Suzanne? That's all we can do, and we're going to develop policies. We already have policies on GMO. We want to phase it out over, it looks like a 5 to 8 year period. It's going to take a while because it's so entrenched, Suzanne, into our food systems. It's going to take time to phase that out, but that would be a good step for this country. Exactly. And we're very concerned about the AI. We need to have a national dialogue on that.
Yes.
Also, the mass surveillance, everyone, which is all connected.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't even talked about the banking in Canada, the corporate banking going on, where all our debt is owed to commercial banks and we're paying so much interest, right?
Yes,
so there's so many issues. And right now, everyone, they're trying to stamp out Canadian nationalism. And this is about being patriotic towards your country, to your people. Mm-hmm. It's about standing on guard for Canada. And that's trying to be phased out right now. And they're partly doing that through the mass immigration. This is a fact, everyone. This is going on. So there's a lot of dots here that are connected. And mass surveillance is that's essential to all this, isn't it? Because it's just controlling, right?
Absolutely. And they want to merge us with the machine, and they want these indentured servants, these cyborgs, to do their bidding. And with this universal basic income that was rolled out, they're doing trials here in Ontario. Sure. You can have these cyborgs stuck to their computers doing nothing, which is what they want. Give them a meager income while robots do most of the work. So, basically what they're doing is they're making humanity superfluous. Will there even be humanity? That's the whole question.
Yeah. This is going on, everyone, on so many levels. And there's so many tentacles of the globalist agenda. And I think the problem here in Canada is I don't think a lot of people trust the government. But in some sense, they do because they're so complacent. Suzanne?
Yeah, I just think they really don't want to ask the tough questions. And unfortunately, we have to kind of peel back that onion and ask the tough questions. I think a lot of people, even on a subconscious level, know there's something wrong. People know there's something wrong. The situation is not good here.
Exactly.
Whether or not they just want to, because we're all getting that feather tap, Stephen. And sometimes we really have to go through some tough situations to wake up to what's going on. It makes it's like, my one of my friends, he talks about the 4 Ds. You have to be debilitated, dysfunctional, destituted, and I can't remember the other one, but you really have to kind of go be at your lowest core and then and pick yourself back up to see that there's things that are really wrong. When you're in your comfort zone and everything's happy and friendly and there's no problems, you're not going to look at this and seriously want to look at this and do something. It's when you're raw. It's like, you know what, you've been there, you've done that, you've seen it, and you know that things aren't cool. So
yeah, I think a really, really big red flag is the lack of national dialogue on these issues.
yeah,
Suzanne, right? And the disinformation.
yeah, I think that this is a biggie. It's the unilateral decision making, and so that's why the government's not even making our decisions. They're just puppets to the larger agenda. It's unilateral decision making, and that's the tough thing. So our governments have to go. This is, to me, a top-down removal of all systems,
exactly.
all government systems, all agencies, Health Canada, everybody that is complicit in what they're doing to us must be removed.
It's got to be drained. It's got to be drained.
It does,
Yeah.
and held accountable because
Yeah.
they're poisoning our country.
Yeah, look up Shiv Chopra. Unfortunately, this courageous, brave scientist, Canadian scientist, passed away. But he did incredible work exposing all the GMO corruption going on behind the scenes. His book is called Corruption to the Core.
Okay.
Corrupt to the Core. Just shows how honest he is, eh?
Yeah.
So he worked for Health Canada for over 30 years. That's how he knows he was on the inside. He's just a whistleblower.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was very good. And yeah, we don't want to wreck your evening tonight, everyone, but we figured, sometimes the truth is hard, but it is empowering, and we have an obligation to talk about it, and otherwise we're no different. We're part of the problem, right? So we're obligated. And this is probably tough for a lot of people. We covered a lot of issues tonight. And I just there's a few comments here. Lloyd says, Alexa is a home-based security system. And it turns on your lights and everything. I guess it has a voice.
It's an AI. Yeah.
AI. Beginning of AI. Carl joined us. Thank you, Carl, for joining us. He's very positive. He says, totally accurate and true. He gets it.
Okay, great.
And he said population education is critical.
Excellent.
And that's very tough, though, because you're competing against the corporate media, the mainstream media, and all the disinformation coming out of government. But you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, too, with my billboards, I mean, right now I have 6 in Ontario. I'm getting one up in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. So I encourage everybody, I've got a billboard campaign. If anybody wants to add a few dollars to that campaign, that would be really appreciated. But these, I think there's nothing better, Stephen, than getting messages out to millions of people a month. And it's a real poke in the eye to the establishment. So I encourage people to get the message out that way if they can. Put a lawn sign, put your bumper stickers, get a billboard up if you can, get a GoFundMe going. That's a lot of what I do. Yeah.
What's the cost? I guess it would depend on the area, the cost of a billboard,
Absolutely.
Right? If it's rural, it's cheaper probably, but city would be quite
correct.
a bit.
Yeah, and the longer the contract, the cheaper the billboard. But it's very gratifying when you get one of those up, because people we just did a 3-day green show. Myself and a friend of mine, a health practitioner in Toronto. It's the largest green show in North America, and the response we had was so amazing. It was just, people are ready for the information, Stephen. Yes, you're going to get your few naysayers, but these people were just so happy we were there. And they're starving for information. And you can always, and I always say to people, you can always segue into this topic in different ways, because there's always something that someone's not too happy about. For example, the food, Monsanto. You can always segue that into geoengineering. If they're not happy with fluoride, well, you can segue that into geoengineering. There's always something you can connect to open up the dialogue. The weather. If someone says the weather today is kind of weird, well, I'm right in there. I will never let an opportunity go if someone's bringing up the weather with me. Yeah,
and here's Risa. She says, she's convinced that we're under a total dictatorship of the UN and globalists. And I don't think most people are unaware when I speak to people about these issues, but they look at her as some crazy person, right?
Yeah.
But No, good for you, Risa. Just keep digging.
Mhm.
That's what we encourage people to do. Get information, get informed. It's going to help your family. It's going to help future generations. It's going to help our country. The more you know, knowledge is power, right? So
Absolutely.
we encourage people to get all the facts they can, and then you can make better decisions for your family. It's common sense. But if you don't know, then you're vulnerable, right? If you
Vulnerable.
don't know, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance can be fatal.
You can.
So, and that's why we did this tonight, and we're going to continue doing programs like this because we want to educate people, we want to inform them, we want to open their eyes,
No, that's
and and some people can't handle it, and we've already discussed that. They're just gonna have to, not everyone's gonna dig deep, right?
well. The thing is too, some of these people have already kind of merged with the machine. They're so mind controlled and programmed, Stephen, and with these nanoparticles in their body, with the frequencies, they're becoming circuit boards. We're becoming veritable circuit boards. So I get why people are afraid or people don't want to look at this, but we have to be brave. And I'm not afraid to be mocked. You know what? Because I am very comfortable in this truth. So
AI is around it's actually here, everyone. Just go search it yourself. There's already robots out there.
Sophia, have you seen Sophia?
No, I have. Yeah.
Sophia just got, if you can believe, the Saudi Arabian citizenship, where we know that there's so many human rights abuses there against women. They allotted a robot citizenship. Her name is Sophia.
And what does the robot do?
So that's the thing. We don't really know, but these they put it out there again, like it's, she's going to do your groceries, she's going to do fold your laundry. But I believe this is malevolent, and I don't think this is the thing. She once said, and that she will destroy humans. I know Sophia was probably trying to be cute, but it's been developed by a company called Hanson Robotics. So this is what she's really making the interview circuits. Sophia is all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Sophia, when we upload basically this mind cloud too, they want all our data and our information from our brains uploaded in that mind cloud, which will then be transferred to Sophia. So we're basically fueling and giving engines to the AI robots as well. So
yeah, it's happening, everyone. This isn't far-fetched. No. There's already robots out there. Go online, go onto YouTube, go onto BitChute, whatever video platform, and you will see it. We have our prime minister, as I said, that is already pouring millions into AI without even consulting us. And he's declared that Canada will become a super AI state. That's his vision, right? So.
Well, even in Japan, Stephen, there's a hotel and it's run completely by robots.
Yeah. So
yeah.
The scary thing, everyone, and we actually touched on this. Through AI, we could lose up to 50% of our jobs. Yet they have this mass immigration into Canada. None of this makes sense from the standpoint of the Canadian people, Susan. But I guess from the corporate globalists, it does make sense, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Canadian people need to wake up, and hopefully tonight has contributed to this. And Carl, here's his comment. He says our governments are actually called corporate facilitators. That is the real term. So they're just extensions of these corporate globalists, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They're revolving doors. They're just revolving doors.
Revolving doors, and we talked about that last week, the revolving door to boardrooms, and then the money flowing in, right, to pay for their campaigns, right?
Yeah.
It's all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's interesting. One of the big donors behind Justin Trudeau, the Bronfman family, who owns Seagram's, they have big vested interest in geoengineering.
Do they really?
They do. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting.
But the government never talks about it, do they?
Oh, well, They can't really. I mean, it's if basically when they're forced to, they'll address it and they'll just say it's water vapor. But that's really insulting our intelligence.
Yeah.
That this is high school science, right?
Right.
So,
Okay.
another guy that people should know about too, David Suzuki. He is a geoengineering denier, so he is part of the problem as well.
Wow.
Yeah, big time. I actually confronted David Suzuki at a march I was at, but yeah, he is, and he's a man actually, again, promoting this scarcity and, finite resources, and we've got to cut back. Yet he has 3 homes and 5 or 6 children. So again, all these people, these elites telling us we need to cut back. Well, what are you guys going to do? I don't think you're going to sell one of your houses. Or Al Gore, after he did that movie, he bought some huge house on a cliff somewhere after all his fear-mongering of rising sea levels, right? So it's just crazy.
Yeah. There's so many inconsistency. Yeah, everyone. It's amazing. You're just pulling the layers there. You could start to see patterns forming.
You can.
And it's really, really disappointing. And it's not just those 2 corporate parties in Ottawa. There's 4 parties there, right? Like the Green Party doesn't even talk about this, right?
They don't, and that's what I find interesting. I was at
so are they bought out? Like they must be bought out too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was at a council meeting and I wanted to talk to one of the Green Party members about it, and I had a brochure I wanted to give them. I make them up, and he said he wouldn't accept paper. So he didn't even want to look at the issue. And when I actually tabled the question, because I tabled the question to somebody on the panel, and most of them hadn't heard about it. And then the one guy just said, "Oh, you mean chemtrails?" And see, this is a conspiracy, again, a conspiracy created by the Department of Defense to malign the issue. Yeah. So that's the thing too. So they again weaponized that term as well.
Yeah, exactly.
They baited and switched it, but that term, Stephen, is in the HARP Executive Summary. It's in the Chemtrails Manual for the U.S. Air Force. It's an accurate term, but again, it's weaponized to use.
Exactly. So that's a big red flag. Also, immigration. Anyone talking about immigration, you're automatically labeled a racist or supremacist. And we did a whole thing on mass immigration. It just doesn't make sense, and it's harming our people, right? So
and it's going to promote this scarcity and lack and cramped quarters because they want these low carbon motility centers. So they're going to be rack 'em, stack 'em apartment buildings, and that's where the immigrants will be. They're going to be siphoning off Canadian resources. So we see where this is going. We do. A flattened third world communist country, or communist global village, as you said. So
that's where we're headed, everyone. We talk about it every week, every day. We keep showing you different sides of this, but that's where we're headed. We're going to be stripped of everything that's meaningful to us.
Yes,
we're basically going to be slaves, tax slaves, and just consumers, and
that's why we have to keep using our voices. Because I do think eventually this agenda will fail, Stephen. Just how long it will take and how much damage it will do in the process, that's going to be up to us. That's all up to us. We have to activate. And I always say awareness is the first key to resistance. Through education, we can awaken people, and then it's up to them to decide what they want to do with the information. But I always say there's no virtue in being silent. We have to be brave. We have to step up. And there's a quote I like, and it's well-behaved women rarely make history. And we cannot remain silent. It's that there's no virtue in that when our planet is at stake. And that's literally, and this isn't hyperbole. This really isn't. We're going into a whole new territory. This is a completely different paradigm with the weather, genetic engineering of our weather, the AI, the genetic foodstuffs. This is a very ugly, ugly agenda. So, and I encourage people, if they want to email me, ask me questions, info@byebybluesky.com. Join my Facebook group. We have a great group there, over 5,000 people. So the dialogue is always flowing. There's wonderful information there, great group of people. And look at other Canadian sites. There's GAG Canada. She's out of Windsor. Tony Pantelleresco, he's a herbalist health fellow I work with. He is helping heal people from diseases. He's amazing. So there's supports, there's resources, and there's ways we can beat this. But let our voices be heard.
100%. Yeah. I'm just gonna Risa says, thank you. This is really powerful. The truth needs to be known.
Thank you.
Excellent,
Thank you,
excellent stuff. Thank you, Risa, for joining us. And she says, are all the MPs involved in Agenda 21, or are some of them ignorant as to what is really happening?
You know, the thing is, they're using all this fuzzy rhetoric and, you know, this biodiversity and all these terms, regionalization. And it's, I don't think maybe for some that it's really clear what in fact is happening, because I'm sure they're under the brainwash assumption that we are creating global warming with our, you know, overconsumption. So,
right.
and I think there's a lot of people in that area that are brainwashed that need to break free of that programming.
Okay.
And you know what? I always say, if it means losing your job, what's the cost?
Exactly.
Because you have to stand up for what's right. And that's crime. You know, standing up has always come at a price. Freedom comes at a price, right? And we can't be afraid to speak about crime when we see it. And we're seeing it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about integrity and not feeding off the trough.
Yes.
The Canadian people and looking out for yourself. Too much, you know, obviously that goes on. It's widespread, right?
Absolutely. And I think we have one chance to do the right thing. We're here once. Let's do the right thing and keep this planet the way God intended and not manipulated for pushed and pulled for profit. There's a good expression, environmentalist Vandana Shiva said. She says, geoengineering is the marriage of stupid scientists and evil minds. And I think that is a perfect analogy. These are crazy scientists and evil minds collaborating and creating this anti-human agenda.
Yeah, okay. And so Carl here, he came in a bit later, but he's saying climate change agenda is the ultimate tool in order to globalize the planet. Look into it, Google resilient cities.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the whole thing. Geoengineering is the hook or the inducer to bring all this in. They need this climate change narrative to bring in Agenda 21 and globalization and carbon taxation. They need to feed that lie. They need to have people believe it, so then they can enact their Machiavellian agenda.
Wow, crazy. Mm-hmm. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. Is there any last comments you want to share, Suzanne?
I guess basically just as I say, research the topic, continue looking up, join together in communities and lose the divide, because the problem is we have been programmed to, you know, be angry, frustrated, divided, to be intolerant. Once we lose that divide and come together, that's when the system will collapse.
Exactly.
Once we come together and work together.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Thank you for joining us, Suzanne. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We're going to close it down now, but we're going to do more of this in the future. Hopefully we can get Matthew on with you. That's going to be a really nice dynamic there. But, you know, tonight was all about sharing the truth, sharing different ideas on the, you know, the present state of Canada, the future of Canada, the state of the world. And hopefully it's opened your eyes. And we look forward to seeing you again in our next Q&A